Hello friends, welcome to Symmetrical Complexity. Today we'll be delving deeper into fear. Now the moment we are talking about fear, very important aspects come into picture. Now is it necessary or is it unnecessary? What are you fearful about? Or in which construct are you fearful about? Are you fearful about the consequences which will happen in the future? Or are you fearful about some imaginary objects or something? So whenever you are talking about fear, the two important aspects come into picture. The first one is it grounded or is it rooted with the consequences of time? Or is it rooted with the consequences of spaces? Now there are two aspects actually for the fear. The first one is which is relying on the physical realm. So the first one is like one of my friends, she used to be fearful about elevator. Someone is fearful about climbing in the mountain. So these are called this kind of fear which is associated with spaces or objects which you can visualize. But something which is very dangerous, or it is not very dangerous, which is very interesting, which is about the fear of your own psychological trauma which you are creating. So that kind of psychological trauma which is making you fearful for your future expectations, or the expectations from the external people, external world. How can you overcome it? So most of the time you will see the fear, the object which you are fearful about, it is having a consequences of time, which I've said earlier. So that consequences of time, why it is coming actually? Because you have a huge amount of expectation which you have generated from your experiences. Now, in the near future, a lot of if-else condition is going on in your mind. If I don't get this, what will happen in the future? If I don't get that, what will happen in the future? Right? So these are actually your own psychological construct, which is basically 95% is imaginary. Which is an imaginary. So you are not fearful about the present scenarios or something. You are fearful about something what will happen in the future. So your fear is always associated with something which is imaginary. Now, an interesting question comes that how can you overcome something which is imaginary, which is relying in your mind, which is creating a network of fear in your mind? How can you overcome something? You can overcome a physical object. You can overcome a mountain. If I can motivate you, you can overcome a mountain, or you can overcome that fear which is associated with your elevator, which I've said earlier. But how can you overcome your own psychological trauma? This is a very interesting aspect. So now whenever you are creating that particular fear, it is starting off with a very tiny expectations, and that expectation gets bigger and bigger, and how vast network it is always associated with your own construct in your mind. So basically what happens, so that if-else condition create an imaginary network of fear. So what is the solution to get out of that network of fear? So the very simplest solution is, for me, what I used to do, I used to break that particular graph from the very initial beginning. So from the point A, let us from the point, and mathematical analogy could be from point A, it is creating A1 and A2. From point A2, it is creating A2 and A3 and A4, 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and exponentially increasing. So why can't we stop that imaginary fear where from it is generating, or from the generating point, that is point A? So it requires a lot of effort to understand it. Basically, our thoughts are appeared in our mind in such a fast speed, we are unable to restrict our expectation from the initial beginning. So you need to practice it. Whenever you're just creating something very negative environment, you have to restrict it from the very initial beginning where from it is generating. That restrictions, how can you do? You can do it by visualizing your own mind. The thoughts which are generated, which is negative, you have to flip it with respect to the positive expectations. Because ultimately you are creating a negative drama. Why can't you replace that negative drama into the positivity or a positive drama? Have you ever thought of creating that positive drama? Or is it that in our mind, most of the time, our mind is aligned with that negativity? Or it is driven by the negativity? That is a very interesting question. So we have to turn our negative thoughts with respect to the positivity. And if I can do that, we can recreate our own expectations with respect to the positivity. So basically, that my recommendation is, fear is not very bad, man. Fear is good actually, because from the very beginning we are fearful about our future most of the time. That fear is necessary because it is driving you towards a betterment or strengthening your foundation. But you are not conscious about that fear. But right now you're conscious about, most of the time you're conscious about your fear. So we should not create an unnecessary fear in our mind. So like I said, from the very initial construct, you have to break that graph initially, where from it is starting. Or if it is creating a sort of positive drama or a negative drama actually, maybe most of the time it is a negative drama or a negative construct, you need to flip it with better positive thoughts or emotions. And that you need to practice it. It don't come within a day. You have to practice that drama from the very initial beginning. Maybe you have to visualize your mind properly. You have to understand yourself properly, and then only you can overcome it. Anyway, so I have given you a kind of solution for it. You need to practice it each and every day. If you are unable to understand your fear, if you are unable to control your fear, write it down into paper, that negative thoughts, and turn it into the positivity by write that positive thoughts right after that negative thoughts. Scribble it and stick to that positive thoughts. I think you can overcome that fear. Anyway, so thank you from Symmetrical Complexity. If you like this video, please share and subscribe it with your friends. I think we're much more fearful. So anyway, thank you from Symmetrical Complexity once again, and please share and subscribe my channel, and please motivate me so that I can bring sort of complexities which are aligned with everyone actually. I'm just projecting that complexity. So thank you once again. Thank you.